Live in Seattle for us today. Let's get more perspective on this as we bring in the talk show host Jason Rantz, host of the Jason Rantz Show. It's on KTTH AM 770 in Seattle. Jason, thanks for coming on. How does this all wrap up? It's going on a while here. What do you think?
Well, it's probably not going to wrap up unless local officials, be it in Seattle or Portland or any of these cities currently under siege, actually act. Right? They actually have to step up and stop some of this lawlessness. You have two separate stories happening right now. You've got the lawlessness that's very clear. We see all the images, we hear the stories, we read the stories. On the other hand, you have a master class in gaslighting, where local officials are basically claiming violence. What violence? It's just a small group of protesters that are getting involved in this. But that's just not true. And you're hearing more and more local leaders who are scared that the federal government is going to send in law enforcement officials like they did in Portland, coming up and saying, oh, no, this is actually the cause of the violence. With all due respect, the violence in Portland, for example, happened about 45 days before the federal officials stepped in.
What about that issue, though, of federal involvement? Because you're right, the president has talked about even having more federal agents get involved. And on the other side of it, I think it was the Attorney General in Oregon who said that there were these federal agents wearing masks that arrested people, no probable cause, took them away in unmarked vehicles. And they said, and that becomes the story, as you say, and that becomes a big part of the narrative on that side of it. So do federal agents need to be involved, or could this be handled more effectively on the local level?
Well, obviously, the local level can effectively handle this. They're choosing not to, and that is why the federal government is stepping in. And to the point that you just made, this narrative of like the secret police disappearing people. If this is a secret police, they are horrible at keeping a secret because it's on video. They're out there. Customs and Border Patrol, the U.S. Marshals, they're out there saying that they're a part of this. And the people that are so-called disappeared, they're doing interviews with the media. And so it is a bizarre, that's why I call it gaslighting. It's just bizarre because we're seeing the images. We know exactly what's going on, and yet we're still being told by some folks in the media, particularly the Oregonian and some of the alternative newspapers in Portland and Seattle, pretending that it's not actually happening. The reason why you've got these unmarked cars going in and making these discreet arrests is because, again, as you'll see on video, if an officer takes their time making an arrest surrounded by a whole bunch of protesters, they get assaulted. There's something called de-arresting where a lot of the protesters are trying to keep themselves closely packed together. So if an officer goes in and tries to make an arrest, they pull that person back into the crowd while simultaneously attacking the arresting officer. We can't allow that to happen. You have to have some arrests when we're talking about the lawlessness. No one is saying you can't go ahead and protest peacefully. Literally, no one is saying that. What we're saying is you can't destroy property, you can't burn down buildings. What happened in Seattle, someone tried to set a Starbucks attached to an apartment complex on fire. That's going to lead to deaths. You had 12 officers injured, 2 of them in Seattle having to go to the hospital. The council here and the mayor's office have said absolutely nothing. And so it is now on the federal government to come in and say, look, we got to keep law and order if you're not going to.
All right, Jason, thank you. We'll stay on top of this story. Jason Rantz with us from Seattle as we cover